Democracy in America is doing just fine. And I don't mean the de Tocqueville book sales. As he said in that book in 1831, the French observer of the new budding nation of the United States of America said that in a democracy, a people will get the government they deserve. And it seems that right now we are in a unique period of national discontent. No one's happy. Perhaps the dust of 2020 has settled, and yet still we find ourselves just a few short weeks away from the 1 year anniversary of 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And nobody's happy about that. Whether or not you buy into whatever level of COVID conspiracy theory level of it was, however much of a threat it is or isn't, or what have you, to see the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. It's no surprise that we see this headline today from the Associated Press: AP-NORC poll, few in US say democracy is working very well. Now, you got to define terms here, right? And one of the things that they don't do is, I don't think they have, certainly not in the questions. By the way, with democracy actually properly defined as whatever, what do you think about this? No. Now, the article says the core elements of democratic government, including free and fair elections and the peaceful transfer of power, put to a dire test by the baseless claims of election fraud advanced by former President Donald Trump. Those assertions of fraud were a root cause of the deadly violence at the U.S. Capitol last month, which damaged the country's reputation as a model for democracy. oh, yes. The United States really needs to worry about its reputation as a model for democracy, not worry about our reputation as an empire or the source of all those bombs falling out of the sky or all the death and destruction or economic ripping off all around the world. No, we need to make sure that our reputation as a model for democracy is intact. Now, the way I see this word democracy, I mean, they're basically two different definitions. Obviously, yes, maybe everybody's got their own definition that they can wrap around themselves like a false security blanket. But there are two sort of practical definitions of democracy. And one, the most direct, deliberate interpretation of the word itself. The etymological root of the word means rule by the people, right? Demo, people, rule, right? So rule by the people can mean a lot of different things. I mean, there are anarchists who would tell you that the only literal democracy is anarchy. You can't have a government because then you have rulers, and then the people aren't ruling. They're being ruled by other people who are somehow selected from the people as a whole. And then you can't have democracy if someone's in charge of somebody else, because then at least that person is denied the right to rule themselves. But in a practical definition of the word democracy, what do we mean? When the AP says democratic government, what are the core elements? Free and fair elections. That means there's a legitimate way for the majority to impose its will on the minority. Yes, democracy in that sense, majority will is bad for minorities. Shocking, right? And it gets us to this unethical system where the majority, or a government acting on behalf of the majority, is allowed, or at least is able to create enough public consent to get away with paying a class of enforcers, cops and soldiers, who are willing to do violence against peaceful people and actually be the trigger pullers and the muscle of violating individual rights, so that they're able to protect that racket that they've got going. Usually, as we see today, you want to talk about, again, democracy is defined in function. Reality tends to be about modern bureaucratic governments centered around fiat currency monetary systems like the Central Bank of the United States, the Federal Reserve System. So you say, this is democracy. In practice, what does it mean? It means that the majority is going to outsource, forcing its will on the minority to a government that is essentially unaccountable. But I would say, in a deeper sense, going back to de Tocqueville's quote there, in a democracy, people will get the government they deserve, that this is ruled by the people. And some people want to say, Adam, how can you say that the people are ruling? Bear with me. Because I recognize, I'm not trying to deny the factual reality of what strings are pulled in our world to make things happen for the superclass. I'm not going to pretend that the corporatocracy, the financial elites, the political elites don't actually run things. But again, de Tocqueville, in a democracy, people will get the government they deserve. You could say that's true about all forms of government. The limits of tyranny prescribed by the tolerance of the oppressed, right? So, if that's the case, how could you call this, Adam? How could you call this democracy? How could you call this rule by the people? Well, it is a sad reflection of the people's will, of the tolerance, the limits of tolerance, but also what we have been fooled into supporting and buying into without question, without challenging the premises, lulled into a false sense of security because we live in a democracy. We just need to restore the function of our democracy. Well, if democracy is the system of government that is of centralized control and exploitation by coercion, then what's the point? What's the purpose of government? A lot of people try to answer this in government's terms. You know, if someone is mugging you and they say, "I'm just doing this to pay for my kid's dental surgery," you're not going to go, "Oh, well, then I guess it's okay to mug me because you have this great excuse for it, sir." So looking past the excuses that governments use to justify themselves, what is the actual purpose of government? To keep the super rich getting richer and the rest of us relatively poorer. Or perhaps you might rephrase it as, at the expense of the rest of us. That we're relatively poorer is just another means of control in order to keep that racket going, to exacerbate the inequalities of the world, to create unnatural, unethical, dare say I, evil even concentrations of wealth and power in the world. And you can't look at the injustice of the world today without taking an honest look at this. So to America, only 16% of Americans say democracy is working very or extremely well, according to this poll. A new AP NORC poll finds Democrats are much more likely than Republicans to say democracy is working at least somewhat well. Yeah, see the problem here? Not really an objective analysis by the general public, is it? Well, if my guy won, then democracy must be working very well. Few Republicans or Democrats say it is working very or extremely well. How well would you say it's working in the United States these days? And you see from that question of all results, it's just over 50% say it's working extremely well or somewhat well. Among Republicans, that's down to 36%. Oh, sorry, we got the numbers here. 54. Yeah, 54%. That was just a guess from looking at the graphic. And then to Republicans down, it's 36%. And for the last 4 years as a libertarian, watching Trump as the greatest trick that Democrats ever pulled on Republicans, you know, big government former Democrat voter and sponsor whose grown government was anti-gun rights from New York City. Yeah. It's been nice to see that Democrats over the last 4 years have lost faith in the system. So of course they got to switch it up and make sure that they stay sucked into this racket. But now it's Republicans who perhaps are more inclined to be in a state of discontent. Over the last 4 years, we saw the California independence movement, of which I'm a board member of the Cal-Exit Congress. Yes, California, check it out. Definitely still growing momentum now with the impending recall of Governor Gavin Newsom, pretty significant discontent brewing in California, despite Biden's victory. No, people on the left, even though they think, maybe more often than Republicans, that democracy is working, they weren't happy that Biden stole the nomination from Sanders. Of course not. They were so desperate for anything other than Trump, they would take any lesser evil, even if that lesser evil is the racist, kid sniffer, sleepy, creepy Joe Biden. So, to this issue of democracy, to where we go, where do we go from this? Why rant about this? Why do I care? Why do I even care how Americans look at this model that is being imposed on us, this diversion of the will of the people under the name of democracy? Is it really a democracy? No. And I wouldn't say that even the current government is an accurate reflection of the paradigm. Let me be clear. No, we have come to be ruled by lies and force and coercion. It's not ruled by the people. It's a fake democracy at best. Even for being a legitimate majority rule system, not even close. But it is a reflection of the paradigm. It is a reflection of what we will tolerate, of how we will be sucked into voting for the lesser evil instead of a real libertarian alternative. Just anything to say we don't need to put up with this duopoly nonsense anymore, because we know that they work for those who really rule us, those who you cannot criticize without being censored, right? The World Health Organization right now comes to mind, local health authorities, the central bank, the corporatocracy, the illusions of the system. And right now, censorship is being ramped up. Why? The lies are wearing thin. The illusion of democracy is failing. And I, at least, can take heart in the fact that more and more Americans are realizing just that. And today is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. Welcome to Adam versus the Man. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry, my screen is frozen. I have no idea what CJ has been doing for the last 10 minutes, but I'm sure it was wonderful because he's an amazing producer. By the way, we have another South Dakota story today. And people are probably wondering, like, why is South Dakota so relevant in Adam versus the Man's view of the news? And it's not because our producer CJ is from South Dakota. It's not because I lived in South Dakota for a summer making gun parts for Dakota Arms in the machine shop. But South Dakota seems to, and it's not because they've got the biggest faces of presidents on mountains anywhere, but South Dakota really does seem to be this weird intersection of a lot of interesting political issues right now. And Kristi Noem, Governor Kristi Noem on COVID, very interesting. Relationship with Donald Trump and Mount Rushmore, very interesting. The Attorney General Ravnsborg hit and run cover up from 5 months ago that we covered yesterday, also very interesting. And the fact that South Dakota jumped from full cannabis prohibition to complete recreational cannabis, well, I think that deserves a toast, does it not?
A toast that I shall join you in.
But not CJ. What's CJ? CJ is in South Dakota now. I don't know if he is, because he might have just so much respect for federal law that he wouldn't dare violate it. But he is at least relatively safe from state and local enforcement when it comes to consumption of cannabis in South Dakota, thanks to the voters there. But, and this is, I mean, I don't know, maybe CJ's going to jump in and weigh in on this, because this is not just, big South Dakota. This is a turning point in the drug war kind of story from the Washington Post. South Dakota voters said yes to legalizing marijuana, but a judge ruled it's unconstitutional. What? Wait, what? Yeah. 54% of South Dakota voters in November voted for a constitutional amendment. And that's an amendment. It's like they say about the Second Amendment and the First Amendment. They're so important you can't change them, because an amendment is something that, no, but they voted for, I mean, that's pretty serious level entrenching something in government, right? To say we're not just going to vote for a law that we can, but like that there's going to, it means there's some entrenching of that. I mean, really, really firm words on paper to protect your rights if they say it's a constitutional amendment. But it was a South Dakota circuit judge appointed by Noem rejected that change, saying they would have far-reaching effects on the basic nature of the state's government to the point of being unconstitutional. What? What? Really? Now this has got to be like in effect already. It's February 9th. I don't know where. I don't know if CJ, you got to come on and at least explain this a little. Hey, CJ,
I was trying to
get
buy
your
him
ass up here.
I was trying to buy him as much time as I
What the hell
can.
is going on in South Dakota?
He was cleaning up after his dog. I was trying to buy him as much time as I can, but you kept begging for him to come on. I'm like, damn it. He just sat back down. I was trying to buy you as much time as I can.
I appreciate it, Jim. I know. I'm listening to Adam reading the headline like, what can I do? What can I do?
I put up the headline when he was reading the headline, but that was as far as I could get.
I didn't know it wasn't legal, gentlemen.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know it wasn't legal. I mean, in all honesty, the day after it was passed, my state's attorney said, yeah, go ahead. It's decriminalized here in our county.
Oh, wow.
You know, like he put it up in the law. Like they just can't willy-washy change their mind on a constitutional amendment. I mean, that within itself. So first and foremost, their time to challenge the constitutionality of Amendment A it was long over the moment that election result got certified. So if they wanted to challenge it on the grounds that they're challenging it on, they had to do that prior to it getting on the ballot. What they're trying to do is they let it get on the ballot, and then they wanted to do what they're doing now, blanket it out where they can say, okay, we'll just let you have it and then declare it unconstitutional. I think that what they did is unconstitutional. So now we've got this problem here where I think what they did is unconstitutional, and they're saying that smoking cannabis is criminal again. Like, no, it's not. And here's how I'm going to tell you. Let me get the other gentleman off the screen here so they don't have to be legally liable for what I'm about to say. The only way to protect your rights is to kill those that would infringe upon your rights. So if you're going to try to stop me from smoking cannabis or make me a criminal for smoking cannabis, something that I call my medicine according to my religion, if you try to stop me physically, I'm going to shoot at you. Like, that is the only way you can defend your rights in America against a government that would infringe upon them. Those are my words. I'm not speaking for Jim or Adam, but I would shoot anybody that tries to stop me from smoking cannabis.
Yeah, no, CJ, I want to put that's beautiful. I want to point out something that you said earlier, just how important this is. Like, even here in Arizona, right, this last election cycle, we went medical to recreational, but it only took effect January 20. Now, was there some shift in enforcement in the meantime? Yeah, probably. But I don't think we ever got an official statement, did we, Jim, from anybody in the Arizona state government or even local government saying, okay, we're not going to enforce anymore? It was more fair, like
I wouldn't be paying attention to the places that they post those notices.
Yeah, no, it's more a matter of enforcement. And this is what I want to get as a point to go back to South Dakota and to CJ and like why it's important to keep pushing even with something like this. And it's the call for legalize it for so long needs to be replaced now with normalize it, and getting that enforcement to stop at the individual level where a cop's not going, well, I can't enforce this because the judge just no, like, and I think like CJ in South Dakota, whoever came out, you said it was a county or a state attorney general said as soon as the vote was certified, says we're not going to enforce this anymore.
Yeah. So first and foremost, it was certified by the attorney general of the state of South Dakota that it indeed did pass. Therefore, the state's attorney put out a memo saying, or in a notice to the community saying, we're not charging anybody with crimes. We're not, don't sell it to kids, of course. Like, they don't want you to create a child victim. And if you tried to sell this to my kid, I would shoot you. So at the end of the day,
if we see you doing something else we don't like, we might use this against you if we feel like it.
I'm just going to start telling the government, if you start to violate my rights, I'm going to shoot you.
I have a question, CJ.
So that's how I'm going to do it. That's my
You said about people selling it to children. Are you telling me that literally, if your child, I understand your child is young, but what age? Like if your child is 16 and they're at the park and one of their friends is selling them some pot, you're obviously not going to kill their friend for selling them pot. So what's the age?
Now he was talking about killing government violating his rights. Not
Well,
people
yeah, but he
themselves.
said he would kill anybody trying to sell his kid drugs.
Oh, that too.
Oh no, yeah, no. At my 6-year-old, absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I said
yeah.
obviously your kid is young enough that it would fit in that. But I'm wondering what the age is. At what age do you stop?
I would again, a child, when you're dealing with children, that they're extensions of their parents by law. So if I've said it like this, like, you know, if your kid needs it, if it's something like your kid needs it as a medicine, and you're selling it to their parent, or you've discussed with their parent that this is their medicine and they can go like in and pick it up, yeah, that'd be one thing. But I would draw the line at you're a 34-year-old dude beating my fucking 14-year-old at a park, gonna sell him some shitty dirt weed. You know, like.
Well, let's grab the third rail of libertarian politics firmly here and talk about age of consent, shall we? So this offers us a different window of looking at age of consent, and I tend to reject any arbitrary judgments of individuals. Like at age 18, you become a what? No, fuck that.
How many rotations around the sun and the moon and the sun have to be mature? Yeah, no, I agree.
There has to be some more objective rather than arbitrary analysis that says, is this person a minor or an adult? And I think even that distinction might be unhelpful. Hold on, let me get to this example here, right? Because we say, are they at the age of consent? And it depends on what you're talking about. And it's not, I don't think even creating an arbitrary age distinction is maybe, you know, entirely unnecessary and unhelpful, because you got to look at it on an individual issue, and it's always possible to take advantage of someone being less capable and committing a fraud or taking advantage of them somehow. So, for example, if I'm like, let's say, you know, I'm a mom and pop cannabis store, and there's some neighborhood kids who I know are going to smoke a little bit of weed and go to the park and go skateboarding. And they're 14, maybe 15, maybe 16. At some point there you go, does that child, does that human, does that individual have a right to decide for themselves that it's appropriate to smoke cannabis and procure it responsibly for themselves, right? At some point they get that, and I think Jim is suggesting that at 16, certainly you would respect a 16-year-old as an adult in the sense to be able to smoke pot or drink alcohol, and that's not a big deal like in Germany, right? But that doesn't mean that it's okay for a 30-year-old to try to have sex with a 16-year-old, right? That there is a high likelihood of an element of fraud or taking advantage of in a situation like that. And that kind of transcends age, but age and sex and drugs can have some interesting intersections. Okay, have I triggered you enough there?
Yeah. So you give me a lot to work with, Adam. So here in the great state of Meth, Dakota, the Queen of Meth says this: if you're a combat veteran and you want to smoke cannabis, you're a criminal. All right? All right? That's just a fact of life. But if you're a 13-year-old, 14-year-old kid at a bar with his dad and the bartender's cool with it, your dad can order you a beer. So fuck you,
Legally?
Kristi Noem. Legally. Yeah, legally.
Okay, but did you have a problem
in South
with
Dakota, you can legally buy your 15-year-old child a beer in a public establishment.
In a public establishment, as long as the owner's okay with it.
Wow, interesting.
Mm-hmm. I learned that when I moved here. I was like, oh, dude, why is that kid drinking a beer? Well, because in the state of South Dakota, if the bartender's cool with it and your dad's with you and your parents with you, he'll let you buy a beer. Now, is he going to let you get your kid shit house drunk and party like it's 1999? Fuck no. But if your kid just came from the field busting his ass all day and working in that corn and he wants a cold beer by the end of the day, yeah, the bartender can give you one. You know, like, and guess what? He ain't driving home. His dad is, who probably had 3.
Yeah.
You know,
But CJ, did you have some issue with what I was saying of getting to the sort of subjective nature that all these age of consent things kind of need to be taken as individual
there's
issues?
a legal standard for when you become an adult. We call it emancipation. If you're an actual legal aged minor, meaning we set the age at 18 arbitrarily, but if you meet the qualifications to get
Emancipated.
then yes. If your parents can say you can legally provide for yourself and pay your bills and do your things, represent yourself in a court of law, you know, and if you were charged, would you be charged as an adult if you committed a murder today?
So you're saying you're kind of okay with the current system of being 18 arbitrary, but earlier if you can fill out the paperwork.
No, if the government can prove that you could stand trial as an adult, I mean, they let 17-year-olds sign up to go to the Marine Corps with their parents' consent. So even the military itself goes, yeah, all right. So even the military, it says, yeah, we'll take a minor if we can. If it's a war, like if we got to. There's been many stories of minors infiltrating military. You're muted, Jim, or unless you're just mouthing what you're saying.
Oh, no, I'm talking. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I got you.
Okay. You messed me up. I forgot what I was going to say. What were you saying?
Even the government will take a minor every once in a while. But
oh, yeah. That's the problem, though, in my opinion, is like it's sort of that way now, but only if you go through the legal processes. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I can't. Like, there's too many cases where a kid is mature enough that they could be considered an adult, and that's what they want for them, but their parents are assholes and brainwashed morons, and they won't allow it. They say, no, this kid's this, and they block the emancipation, shit like that.
Oh, dude, there's some things in Arkansas that make me question age of consent laws, because I'm like, dude, these twisted backwoods people can figure out a way to do some really sick shit. And I'm like, hey, but you know, at the end of the day, I would say this. This is an arbitrary, for government speaking terms. Would the government, like, let's say we were talking about age of consent with drinking alcohol, would the government take you at that age if you were a minor doing something? So the military. So technically, like 17 becomes a gray area. 16 is when they let you drive a car in most states. In the state of South Dakota, I can put my 14-year-old behind the wheel of a car. So in some places, you can put a 10-year-old. You know, my dad likes to remind me that at 12, he was driving semis already. So, you know, like, I mean, there's even the government saying, okay, you're at 12, you can teach them how to drive a tractor. You know, like it essentially it escalates as to what you can do. In fact, you know, there's even studies to what kids are mentally capable of handling. That's why we save like sex ed for, you know, high school.
I don't know how we got into
the public system,
into the legal specifics of what the government approves and doesn't approve.
No. We got to speak in the status term.
I want to circle back to your personal opinion about the situation that Adam raised, like
I
about
live by the
a cannabis shop owner selling to a 16-year-old kid who he knows going to go to the park and just smoking responsibly, etc. Would you freak out on that because they're not legally emancipated?
Okay,
and all that?
No. Listen, so your parent goes, hey, you know, my kid's been acting up in school, and this indica strain is going to help cure his anxiety. So they go to a medical dispensary, and they've got their need for that medicine, and that kid is going to then go pick up his medicine on a Thursday because he's got, you know, anxiety issues and dealing with school things, and he goes to the park and he smokes some herb, and then he goes and shoots some hoops on basketball and goes home and does homework. No, I don't give a fuck. Tell me when he caused the victim and I'll have a problem, you know. But until then, it's like, was there a victim? I mean, we have lines in not only society but in government standard for what consent is for different things. You consent to be on the same road as 14-year-olds that can drive legally in the state of South Dakota. In just 3 years, I'll be putting a kid on the road. On the road.
I want to point out, and I don't want to stop this because this is fun, but that there's a bigger point of tension here around age of consent that gets to indicates an even bigger point of tension of when does something become a crime with a victim that someone can intervene in, right? And so with parents in age of consent, the tension is, when do you tolerate parents limiting the rights of their children versus when do you respect the rights of the child, right? So we generally would respect a parent forcibly keeping alcohol away from their child because it has health consequences. But we wouldn't support a parent keeping a 20-year-old locked in their basement. And you see, somewhere in the middle is where the social consent of those 2 points of tension is resolved. Wow, we got a $50 super chat from Bogus Hype. Is this how we win? Oh,
was actually way earlier. I've been waiting to get to the comments because we've been doing this little debate thing here.
There's been like hundreds of comments.
That's your job.
No. How you gonna expect Jim to have a proper age of consent conversation when the chats are just doing like what the chat does every morning? Random gibberish of people I will never in my lifetime meet or know.
Bitcoin hit 48 G's. What do you think about that?
Is this how we win? Is this how we win? Yes, thoughtful, compassionate, fun, loving, engaging conversations that change how people think, that make people more conscientious. Yes, this is how we win a voluntary society, because that's what I define winning as.
He said he was going to do it before he did it too, by the way. Bogus Hype. He said, I'm going to do a big super chat. And then he did the big super chat. Let everyone know ahead of time. Be prepared. Sit down. Make sure you're sitting down.
That's one of the biggest ones we've seen in a long time, gentlemen. He may have one of the biggest ones we've seen in a long time. And
probably winning membership in the Producers Club today as well, which we should announce. We should talk about that for a minute. And by the way, I figured out the timing issue on the South Dakota cannabis issue. We're going to come back to that and resolve it after we check in with comments and promos, and then we're going to get to our headline grab bag. But let me point out first, top comment of the day and top super chat of the day win membership in the Producers Club. Assume we don't get, and I think $50 or more at this point. Yeah, we're not going to take that away from our current leader on that. So $50 or more in a super chat, you can buy Producers Club membership one time today for sure. Jim, tell him what he's won.
Oh yeah, the Producers Club is our private version of the Telegram chat. Anybody on this stream can join the public version at t.me/Adam versus the man. That's a Telegram chat that's public for everyone. But if you want to be in the private chat, you can just go straight to adamversustheman.com and click on the Patreon link, and that's going to bring you all the different levels of support that you can give Adam and the show. $1, $5, $10, or $50 a month are the Patreon subscriptions. $10 a month is what gets you access to the private Patreon Telegram Producers Club chat. I think I said that totally wrong, but you know what I'm talking about by now. The private chat is where we share links with each other. We talk throughout the day about how we feel about stuff. It's really cool inside backstage, if you will, to the show. After that, you can go back to adamversustheman.com and visit the store that CJ's put together. Check out all of our cool merchandise with all the different logos on it. Bunch of cool stuff to look at, towels, all kinds of unique stuff that you can look at. Most common and most popular, I think, are the coffee mugs, just because everybody likes coffee mugs. So get yourself a Freedom mug and tag yourself in Twitter and tag Adam with it. After that, on the same website, adamversustheman.com, it has everything that you need. You can go back to that website, and there's now a link on there for our affiliate, cigarfederation.com. And you can visit them, check out all their exotic flavors of cigars, and use promo code ADAM10, and that'll get you 10% off of everything you order, so you can enjoy all of the exotically flavored tobacco products and smoked cigars. Lastly, please visit the Instagram, at the Garden of Freedom, and that's where you can keep up with Adam and everything that's going on up in Gardenia. You're going to want to be a part of that, because we got in the next so many months, he's going to be doing a lot. He's going to be building a lot. He's going to be declaring independence with his property. You're going to want to be attached to this so you can follow along with what's going on visually through pictures. There you go.
Now I got to say one more thing. Follow up to that, Jim. That the Telegram group that our broadcast channel, the public t.me/Adam versus the man that CJ set up. I'm really excited about this. I have seen some of the recent attacks on Telegram, but also seeing how much it's blown up. I think it has such a broad user support base and enthusiastic, consistent engagement of conscientious supporters at this point, especially with its explosive growth over the last few months. I think Telegram's here to stay. I'm comfortable saying, let's invest in this Telegram channel. This might be our answer, and this might be, how we overcome all the censorship and say, you know what? We got a mechanism. It's fun. It's easy for you to control. We're going to post all of our videos there. You're going to see the links. So I want help. CJ and I think are calling for volunteers from the Producers Club, especially, to be curators of that Adam versus the Man Telegram channel. And when I post a meme on Twitter or retweet something and forget to share it in there to make sure it gets in there, we create what is that content stream around Adam versus the Man that if you want to listen to the show every day and have fun with us for 2 hours, it's part of my pledge to you as a journalist, as a pundit, that we'll cover essential headlines, that you won't be in the dark about anything. But if you want the more efficient way, that's the only place we're going to be publishing all the links to articles that we do on the show. They will be in that Telegram group. So it's going to be every post you can comment on. There's already some fun conversation in our Producers Club chat, and I think we really got to move Bullshitters Anonymous into commenting on stuff in the public channel. But yeah, we've got all these reasons, and now getting this organized is, I think, this might be the answer, because and people have said, well, Adam, why don't you have an email list? One, people don't check emails. Two, if they're Gmail, we get sent to their spam or promotions eventually. And three, we've been screwed by even email service providers like MailChimp going, oh, well, we didn't like how you sent your content. And you're like, all right, Telegram it is. And if this is it, and this is the most effective mechanism, and this is how people want to be reached. I see that there are other great successful channels out there with tens, hundreds of thousands of subs. And we want to get that going. So yes, thank you to Country Girl Yee, thank you for sharing that on Telegram. Very much appreciate that. And again, being that active, engaged audience, we require you every day. Super chats and supporting the sponsors and Patreon, but just being engaged. Even if there's no monetary or other contribution, just be engaged. Share what's important to you. I implore you, as a fellow citizen of Earth, help improve the conversation by being conscientiously engaged. So back to if there are no other promos or producer notes, back to the Washington Post story on South Dakota and cannabis. South Dakota voters said yes to legalizing marijuana, but a judge ruled it's unconstitutional. The last sentence in the article is, if a higher court overturns Clinger's ruling, July 1 will mark the first day it will be legal to possess small amounts of marijuana in South Dakota. Large amounts still very, very illegal. But July 1, and maybe it's because of your constitutional amendment process there, CJ. There's that Constitution getting in the way of things again, right? But maybe it's, that's why it takes effect in July as opposed to January, like most initiatives.
Right. So no, I'm of the mindset that I'm not asking permission from this government personally. I have zero intentions of saying, Christy, can I smoke cannabis, please? I've been to 2 of your goddamn treason wars, and I'm gonna go smoke some cannabis in the state of South Dakota, and I don't give a fuck what you think. And that's just the end of discussion. I don't care what the Supreme Court of South Dakota does. I don't care what the legislature does. I don't care what the executive branch does. They're all fucking criminals, in my opinion. So I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you, if you are the representative, freedom-loving democracy, the republic, whatever the fuck you want to claim, constitutionally speaking, if I'm free, I can fucking smoke my weed. And if I'm not, then you're a fucking slave owner and you're not telling us what we actually are. In which case, I'll just call you out on it. And until then, you know, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. If you want to try to make me a criminal for smoking my medicine and something my religion says is my medicine, come try to stop me. I will fucking shoot you. End of discussion.
CJ, what are you trying to do? Get us censored on YouTube again? That's what a free person would say. There's no way you're allowed to say that here.
All right, Adam, I'll censor myself for the rest of the show by putting myself on mute. And so
no, CJ, that was beautiful, but that was, you know, you brought me back perfectly to the point I was getting to earlier of normalize it, right? Normalize that attitude as well. And to go out there and say, you know what, you're just a bunch of bullies threatening us for doing something peaceful. I think so between now and July 1st, South Dakota is in this gray legal area where you have had government officials say enforcement doesn't include this, but they have the option to at any point up until July 1st, and there's a legal fight between now and then. And I think it's all the more important during this time to, in a loving, non-confrontational way, say, yeah, I smoke pot. No, you should not be bothered. I smoke pot, and this is why. And we're still at a point where even if you want to make the ethical arguments, you want to make the absolute natural law self-ownership arguments, it's still important in terms of your goal is to reduce the viciousness of the state, to help end the drug war, to not be ashamed of what you do and to normalize it and say, this is something that I do deliberately, conscientiously, and that I believe is good for my overall health.
Yep.
Do you want me to disagree with you? I don't think Jim disagrees with you. Again, I don't mean to say that I'm threatening any individual with my speech here. I'm just saying you got to come use violence against me. That's it. If you leave me alone, I'm going to leave you alone.
CJ, what you're doing is still a peaceful assertion. I mean, if there's a cannabis rally in South Dakota that you go to, though,
I'm going to one. I'm going to one.
And you're going to speak, I assume. I hope you're going to be a speaker there.
No, I'm going to shut up because that's what Kristi Noem wants.
No, just leave the shooting part out. You don't have to say that part.
I'm going to go there with a gun on my hip.
Okay, no, yeah, you carry it, but you don't wave it around physically or verbally.
Oh, no, absolutely not. I don't even talk about it, really. I'm a concealed carrier. I got permission when you still had to get permission from the government to conceal carry in South Dakota. Pre-Kristi Noem. Now, Kristi, you gave me permission to stick a gun on my hip and cover it up and just conceal it. You gave me that permission. And so, I mean, what do you expect me to do with it? If it's not being exercised.
Well, it's like speak softly, carry a big stick. I think my version would be speak lovingly up until the point you are unready to unleash unholy hell and death upon someone in defense of your loved one.
Yes, Adam. Now that is the best way to articulate it. I will. Right. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Well,
although I would point out, I will also escalate using nonviolent or using non-lethal force and what containment procedures as possible. Sorry, what was that comment? Get that comment back up, Jim. Don't say shoot them. Say I will defend my right to the death as the Constitution allows and demands following the law. Yeah, no, actually, that's an even better way of saying it precisely. Rather, like that is true to the non-aggression, more rhetorically true to the non-aggression principle than I will shoot you if you XYZ.
It's a stretch, Adam. I understand that.
Is the assertion,
Right. But I'm just telling the people in South Dakota in their language how they understand it, so that way there's a clear understanding. Because if we don't have an understanding in language, then we don't have an understanding at all. So I will just say, like, I'm gonna defend my life, liberty, and my pursuit of happiness to the death, of course. So, and part of that is yes, cannabis when I need medicine, like
No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Finish the thought.
No, like when, for example, like I want to, have a session where I can relieve my stress from the day. We smoke weed on this show. There's no doubt, like cannabis, we are a proponent of it, and being veterans, we're showing you we do a Monday through Friday functional, at least semi-functional show.
It's a
Every
lot more
freaking
functional than what I'm drinking.
well, yeah, but it's good when you have a good drink every once in a while. But I mean, indulge, right? Like, and have
All
a good
things in
day.
moderation, especially
But
moderation.
in moderation, and yeah, but we have days where we've had really heavy shows where I'm like, fuck, man, like I could use a goddamn bowl. I need one. My like stress is like up here, and then I'm like, I get a bowl, and I'm like, oh, it ain't so bad. It ain't so bad. Like, it's actually not as bad as I thought it was. That was a lot of just stress and anxiety for nothing. And then, so the opposite then being true is Christy Nome would have to be like, no, that feeling CJ gets where the stress and anxiety goes away, we got to take that from him.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, fuck you, bitch. And I'm sorry that I got to be so brutal with it. But at the end of the day, I go,
literally making me angry.
you're literally making me angry. Like, that is like, why? I'm trying to be like, you know what, Christy? I've even said nice things about Trump, but I struggle like fuck with you. Like, I know you're a real person, but at the end of the day, I just question your every fucking move because you say you like freedom, but your actions prove that that's not fucking true. And so it's like, don't pretend to me that we're gonna have this state of freedom where you can tell me that you love the country and the founding. She literally worships a mountain that was stolen from indigenous people that put slave owners on it and killed many people and created this plantation we live on. And she worships that. And those people killed the people in prior government to establish that. And then they wonder why we're like, I'm proud to be an American. Like, just to me, it's absolutely the truth that we are on a plantation. And I think some people do figure it out. But I'll tell you what, I don't like telling people we're slaves. I think that's not like right because it like just punches them right in the face. Like, you're not free, you idiot. If you just like take somebody, no matter what age they're at, and you just go, if they think they're free and they're in that moment where they're like, I'm free, it's like, bitch, you're a slave. And just give them that reality check.
Yeah. I always follow that statement up with, you're a fucking slave. I mean, don't worry, I'm a slave too.
Yeah, like
We're all
slaves
slaves.
here. Like,
I'm not saying
right.
you're something I'm not. I'm not trying to belittle you. I'm
Yes.
trying to raise you up to realize it.
Yes.
Till you realize it.
Fuck
Well,
yeah.
hey, tomorrow our guest is Walter Block, and my wife recently hadn't heard of him, and I had to introduce him to her as one of my intellectual inspirations, a heavyweight in the movement, a student of Murray Rothbard, our intellectual godfather, and someone who has frustrated me to no end with his support of Donald Trump while maintaining his voluntarist credentials and intellectual grounding, and even came up with the formula for what I think was really missing in libertarianism around the issue of abortion, of an ethical analysis that acknowledges the self-ownership both of the mother and the child. And it's a weird word to apply, but his evictionism formula is if you don't know it, evictionism as a means of analyzing the abortion issue from an ethical libertarian perspective. It's a brilliant analysis. So I don't have any plans for what we're going to talk about with him tomorrow. And he's written a bunch of very successful books, scholarly published articles, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see on our calendar that maybe this is a follow up to him being censored at his university, the Loyola University in New Orleans. If he's got some update for us. But definitely open to suggestions for topics because Walter is someone that we go a lot of directions with and a lot of things right now. Speaking of which, we got a couple of news blocks to get to politics. And what you were getting me thinking about here, CJ, is we have a gun rights block and predictably new Democrat president, guns are going to be in the headlines again.
Our $50. This was our $50 super chatter. So he has another follow-up question, if you'd like to answer that.
Will you do a virtual city hall for us here in Oregon about the mandatory vaccinations they're about to legislate? Absolutely, I would love to. Yes, I mean, send me an email, Adam at thefreedomline.com, or our booker, Marcus at thefreedomline.com, and we'll get it on the calendar. That sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, there's so many things about the mandatory vaccinations that you can argue about, and you shouldn't, because the argument is really simple. I have made this decision for myself. I have a right to my body, and I don't think it should be forced on anybody. Everybody should have the right to decide for themselves. And the idea of forcing them on people, if you fall into the trap of arguing, well, the vaccine is dangerous. Well, compared to what? You drove here, driving. You're going to lose that argument because you've already ceded the moral ground. So, I mean, for me, I'd be happy to get into all of that and explore the implications. And a town hall would be a really fun way. I just want to remind you that you don't need me to make this case. You don't need me to stand on this simple ethical principle that no, you can't force anybody to put something in their body that they don't want. You can deny them access to something you own. You can say you're not allowed in my home if you haven't had the vaccine. You can say you don't have the right to come in my business if you don't have the vaccine. But you can't say that you can't be in public, or you can't be in your home, or you can't do things that you have a basic right to do. So Bogusai writes, Oregon is going to remove parents' ability to refuse vaccination for their children. Yeah, and usually that's in order to go to a government school kind of thing. And if what this creates is, a further like a bifurcation of the economy into a conscientious and unconscientious half, where there's the white market and the black market, so to speak. But the white market, the red market, the violence dominated, approved legal market, versus the black market and the gray market, where people are able to act without that coercion. And of course, there are other threats and other challenges that goes along with it. It's never going to be that. Okay, now I'm like, I could talk about this for an hour for a town hall and take questions very easily. But you see, even then, I just want to encourage people to fight this on the simple ethical arguments. If you want to make the case separately to people who are weighing their decision with an open mind, hey, you should know this about the vaccination. And even then, the argument's pretty simple of, hey, even if you're really concerned about the virus, I would say please maintain hygienic isolation. I would rather you wear gloves and a mask and a face shield everywhere you're within 6 feet of other people, and just know that your risk is actually low, because you're going to want to do that anyway. The vaccines, they're saying now you're going to get sick anyway. Yeah. But at core of all of the resistance to COVID, we have to stand firm on the ethical principles of fundamental human rights, and that is nothing without respect for basic bodily autonomy. And the threat of that right now with the vaccines is uniquely scary, and certainly deserving of attention. So I would really appreciate the opportunity to address that. All right, so jumping into our first politics blog, we got two stories. First one from the Miami Herald via MSN.com. Biden team under fire for deportation uptick, backing Moise as Haiti tensions multiply. Is that how you say his name? They arrived back in Mexico without shoes, identification documents, or even children's diapers. That's right. Held by U.S. immigration officials in detention over several days, the group of over 100 Haitian asylum seekers were sent back across the border earlier this week, carrying little more than the clothes on their backs, according to immigration advocates in a memo shared with the Miami Herald. The group immediately stood out as they arrived from El Paso and Juarez, one of Mexico's most dangerous border cities, under a public health measure known as Title 42 that the Trump administration invoked during the coronavirus pandemic, said Tanya Guerrero, an immigration attorney in the area. Though President Joe Biden quickly issued an executive order halting all deportations for 100 days, this was one of his first acts in office. Information from Haitian government officials, U.S. state and activists indicate the pace of removals has continued at a steady clip. Okay. Do I need to rub it in for Democrats and say I told you so? That Biden is nothing special? Just another lying politician, that those were campaign promises? No, of course not. I'll hesitate from rubbing it in anymore. All right, wait, what was the other political story? Anyway, we're getting to our gun stuff. You ready to talk about guns? National-justice.com. Senator Marco Rubio introduces bill to suspend gun rights of anyone who has been investigated for domestic terrorism. Now, I don't even have to get into the details of this to know from the headline here that what he's trying to do is give the government the power to take away gun rights from anyone at any time simply by investigating them. And by the way, investigating for domestic terrorism would now include if you happened to be at the January 6th false flag insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, even if you were just there as a journalist, you have been investigated. This is a guilty until proven innocent precedent that is incredibly un-American. But since my producer pointed out, well, let's go directly to the source. We're going now to rubio.senate.gov, and this is from a release on his site from February 2. Rubio reintroduces legislation to prevent suspected terrorists from purchasing firearms. U.S. Senator Marco Rubio reintroduced the Terror Intelligence Improvement Act to make it harder for suspected terrorists to purchase firearms. The bill would also provide more authority for law enforcement agencies to go after suspected terrorists while safeguarding law-abiding citizens' Second Amendment and due process rights. Yeah, so this is the propaganda straight from the horse's mouth. As Rubio said, quote, after the terrorist attack at Pulse nightclub, I made a promise to improve our laws to make it more difficult for evil people to get a hold of guns. This bill is a common sense measure that would help ensure criminals, terrorists, and others seeking to take innocent lives are not able to acquire firearms, while also protecting the due process and Second Amendment rights of innocent law-abiding Americans. So let's see. So now we have a conflict here because our intrepid reporters at national-justice.com are saying that this would be anyone who's been investigated, and Rubio, in his words, is saying criminals, terrorists, and others seeking to take innocent lives. Now, if he is using those words to describe anybody who's been investigated, then you're saying anybody that any federal agent for a moment thought might have been a terrorist. That would include innocent law-abiding Americans, and Rubio would be taking their rights away. So let's see. There is point 3 here. The Terror Intelligence Improvement Act. I guess it really should be the Terrorism Improvement Act, right? When an individual who was the subject of a federal terrorism investigation within the last 10 years tries to obtain a firearm, allow the U.S. Attorney General to delay the purchase or transfer for up to 10 business days and file an emergency petition in court to prevent the transfer. If the court finds probable cause that the individual is or has been engaged in terrorism, the Attorney General may arrest the individual. So now it's going to make it, I guess, scarier for people to purchase firearms legally because you might have been the subject of a federal terrorism investigation within the last 10 years and not know. Have you been to a protest? Have you been to a subversive political meeting? That might lead you to be the subject of a federal terrorism investigation at some point in the last 10 years. And according to this language, straight from the horse's mouth, it means that the U.S. Attorney General could then immediately stop you from purchasing a gun and now have you arrested for probable cause of having been engaged in terrorism. We're not going to go after you from terror. They're not saying let's go after people for terrorism. It's for buying a gun. Someone who goes after something secondary to the root cause has motivations that we would describe as ulterior motives, right? Secondary motivations to what they're saying. Marco Rubio's interest here is not in protecting the rights of law-abiding citizens exercising their rights under the Second Amendment. Of course, these are actually God-given natural rights to self-defense, at least on your own property, or where by consent on others' property by whatever means you see fit. So to see that, oh, Marco Rubio using what if he gets away with this, and I think Mr. Rubio, this isn't your grandpa's Senate. It's not the days of John McCain's bullshit and two-faced tactics like this have passed. I don't think you can get away with this right now. I don't think you can put up a bill saying that is going to supposedly go after terrorists while using purchasing of firearms as your point of going after them. How many terrorists, anyway, Mr. Rubio, are going to gun stores and getting their information into the the database of FFLs, federal firearms licensees, and giving you the chance to stop them from buying a gun? Really? Are you really? No. Who is going to buy a gun this way? No terrorists. No. This is only going to be targeting law-abiding citizens. And what Mr. Rubio here is trying to get away with is saying that he is protecting gun rights and going after terrorists when really he is doing neither of those things. He is improving federal power, increasing the size and scope and authority of government at the expense of your freedom, because he is just another Republican, just another statist. Crypto God writes, when does the FBI put itself on their terror watch list? Yeah, no, don't. Being government means never having to say you're sorry. Now, again, why is this relevant? And aside from, yes, hey, they're coming after your guns, and them is the feds, including the Republicans. Shocking, right? Well, this is also a concern after Brennan classified even just libertarians as potential domestic terrorists following the January 6th false flag insurrection. Yes, and why? Like, this is, again, like yesterday, we got into this with a few follow-up news articles directly on the issue of the false flag insurrection. But again, I will remind you, we cover this because it has ongoing broad implications, and this is one of them: how the federal government goes after gun rights in the wake of this. What is the point of a false flag? It's so that you can attack back at the false, the bearer, or the country represented, or by that false flag. And in this case, that flag is the right of the Trump supporters, the libertarians, the American people who don't go along with COVID policy. And by blaming those groups as a whole for the actions of really no more than a few dozen people, even violating property rights in any meaningful way on January 6th, yes, who actually destroyed property or assaulted officers or others, they are certainly guilty of those transgressions. But the idea of this as a false flag is that it is being used then to go after anybody associated with anybody who harbored the terrorists. Remember the premise of the global war on terror? We have to invade Afghanistan because they harbored the terrorists. Well, considering our government is saying that there are domestic terrorists being harbored here in the United States, shouldn't we be asking China to invade the United States and take care of this little terrorism problem for us, the same way that the United States took care of the problem so effectively in Afghanistan? Forbes has this next headline on gun rights. Supreme Court will decide whether police can enter a home to seize guns without a warrant. Yeah. This is your democracy working, people. The Fourth Amendment right against warrantless searches for a person's home is a pillar of Americans' constitutional liberties. Before a police officer or any other government official can enter your home, they must show a judge they have probable cause that they will discover specific evidence of a crime. There's some limited exceptions to this right. There is an exigent circumstances exception. If a police officer looks through a home's window and sees a person about to stab another person, the officer can burst through the door to prevent the attack. There is also the emergency aid exception. If the officer looked through the same window and saw the resident collapsing from an apparent heart attack, the officer would run to the house and administer aid. Neither of these cases violates the Fourth Amendment if you would argue that it should be otherwise. And by the way, this is generally true to the analysis of the non-aggression principle. We say that property is sacred, right? But it's not that you can never destroy someone else's property. It's that you are responsible for that. So if you saw someone, you look over through your neighbor's window and you see them getting choked by a robber, and you break in the window and you bust down the door and you break into the home, and you stop the assailant. You are creating value for them. You are creating a lot more value for them by stopping this assault than you have destroyed by breaking into the home, right? But let's say you heard a TV going off and you mistakenly thought it was a robbery in progress and you broke down the door. Fuck you. You're responsible for the damages. It's your mistake. And, people should, I suppose, what if it's a partner choking out another in a sex act and they forgot to draw the blinds and you thought it was an assault and then you broke in? Yeah, that's still on you, but they should probably close the blinds next time. There's a lot of subjective interpretation in all of this, and I hope if you're doing anything like that, you take appropriate precautions. So, similarly, Stefan Molyneux, when he used to be a leading libertarian voice, would use the, if you're dangling off a building, right? If you're hanging by a rope off the side of a building, and you need to break an apartment's window in order to get in and survive, as long as you say, yeah, I'll pay for the window and deal with the damages and whatever else I might break, because my life is worth more than that to me, and you're allowed under the non-aggression principle to make that call. I had, by the way, interesting quick sidebar. I had a really fun debate last night with Ben Burgess on his show, and he's making the case for centralization, that no, you don't have the right to secede. Yeah, so check that out. But it's one of these things that a lot of people take a very simplistic understanding of the non-aggression principle and say, well, property, you own yourself, it's inviolate. No, it's not. There are two ways of looking at libertarianism. In one sense, it's descriptive, and in another sense, it's prescriptive. Descriptive as in it describes a reality. It describes a reality that is an independent consciousness in your own physical body in a true, deep, irrefutable sense. You own yourself, right? No one can get in your brain and control you. They can forcibly deny that reality or that right that you would have from that. And we can observe, we describe that reality in showing that non-aggression, that cooperation and market principles and voluntary interaction are more conducive to human happiness. But then we prescribe certain things based on what we think is going to be most effective for human happiness. So it's both descriptive and prescriptive in that sense. And if you take an unnecessarily narrow or simplistic view of the non-aggression principle, you lose these. I don't want to say. I guess they're kind of. If you're extremely simple-minded, if you want to sip for the state, yes, these are nuances of libertarianism. But no, it's pretty simple to say that, yeah, no, our concept of ethics covers this, and it's because it's not absolutist in being prescriptive, but in being descriptive. So anyway, back to the threat to your Fourth Amendment here. Oh, I got to refresh this story. I'm sorry, Forbes didn't load properly for me. All right. So, however, there's a broader cousin to these exceptions called the community caretaking exception. It derives from a case in which the police took a gun out of the trunk of an impounded vehicle without first obtaining a warrant. The Supreme Court held that there is a community caretaking exception to the Fourth Amendment's warrant requirement because police perform community caretaking functions totally divorced from the detection, investigation, or acquisition of evidence relating to the violation of a criminal statute. The court held that police activity in furtherance of these functions does not violate the Fourth Amendment as long as it's being executed in a reasonable manner. Now, I would say that too, that if there's a liability, right? If there's an irrefutable liability, and you take responsibility for your actions, right? Like if I see a loaded gun on the sidewalk because it fell out of somebody's pocket, fuck yes, I'm going to pick it up and secure that firearm, and not say, well, technically in that sense, it's abandoned property also. But even if I see it on someone's lawn, I'm going to walk across your lawn to pick up an unsecured firearm and not let it just sit there open in the public. Probably knock on your door and see what the hell is going on. But that's another place where the violation of property of taking a few steps across your lawn to pick up an unsecured firearm is far outweighed by the benefit of the securing of that liability of that great risk. Now, in all of these exceptions, we see that the non-aggression principle provides a very clear understanding of what's ethical and what isn't, and what it means to take responsibility. The problem is, police, responsibility, don't hear those words in the same sentence very often, right? And they say, is it executed in a reasonable manner? I don't trust unaccountable government agents to determine for themselves what is reasonable. But that gets to the gun issue, right? So note that unlike the first two exceptions, this one is not limited to immediate emergencies. In the Supreme Court case that just described, there was only a general concern that vandals might eventually break into the impounded car and steal any weapons that were in the trunk. So the community care exception is far broader than the other two. Also, all three exceptions allow warrantless searches so long as the police officer acted reasonably. That is one of the easiest constitutional standards to meet, as a significantly lower standard than probable cause, which is required for a warrant. As long as the officer might reasonably think that a warrantless search will alleviate a danger to the community, the search is considered constitutional. So then there's the story goes on to, and by the way, if you really, this is to me, this is what I want to geek out on, all this like legal, philosophical, like parsing. I'm tempted to jump down all these rabbit holes and say, what is the limit of the community caretaking doctrine? I took constitutional law in college and in grad school, and I loved it, and not because it was the Constitution, it was the authority, but because it was this precise parsing of these ethical principles. So just skipping ahead here, it is certainly true, the last two paragraphs of the story, it is certainly true that the police need a good deal of discretion in carrying out their very complex and sometimes dangerous duties, but they are also powerful agents of the government, and their power is supposed to be restrained by the Bill of Rights. The Fourth Amendment is supposed to protect the home above all other places, and whatever one's views on gun control may be, the Supreme Court has clearly held that the right to keep handguns in the home is at the core of the Second Amendment. Unlike the exigent circumstances and emergency aid exceptions, the community caretaking exception is not limited to circumstances where there is no time to apply for a warrant, and the question of what sort of caretaking falls under this exception is extremely vague. Will the police be able to use it, for example, to conduct warrantless searches of political protesters' homes to make sure they aren't planning on violent behavior at their next political rally? The Supreme Court is going to take a very close look at this case, and there's a good chance that it will overrule the lower court's decision. All right. Related to that, from breaking911.com, new bill would essentially criminalize private gun ownership in the United States. A new bill that has been proposed by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Democrat of Texas, would effectively, and I'm pretty sure she's Houston area. There's a unique Democrat stronghold there. Would effectively criminalize private gun ownership throughout the United States. H.R. 127, also referred to as the Sabika Sheikh Firearm Licensing and Registration Act, would be the most radical gun control reform the United States has ever seen if passed. The bill is named in memory of Sabika Sheikh, a Pakistani foreign exchange student that died in a school shooting in 2018. Of course, let's have a martyr for the cause, right? So what would this bill do? Require a license to own any gun or ammo, require a 24-hour class to be certified with a firearm, raise the age to purchase a firearm to 21, require government-mandated psych eval to own a firearm, require an additional license. So, this is the current liberals' wet dream for gun control. Is it going to pass? I doubt it'll pass like this, because this seems like more than an incremental jump. But we are going to be following this, and as it comes through the legislative process, I would predict you're going to see it stripped down. And it's sort of like, this is what the liberals are asking for right now, knowing that they'll be happy if they get some incremental victory along these lines. One more firearms related story today, this tragedy from LM Tribune, that's LewistonTribune.com, LMTribune.com. The headline is Winchester man arrested after allegedly killing ex-son-in-law in Ross Sauer's parking lot. Winchester man is in the Nez Perce County Jail awaiting first-degree murder charges after he allegedly gunned down his ex-son-in-law in the parking lot of Ross Sauer's supermarket at Lewiston on Friday evening, according to Lewiston Police Lieutenant Rick Fuentes. James Robert Brashier, 67, allegedly shot John Allen Mass, 40, of Williston, North Dakota, shortly before 6 p.m. over what appears to be a child custody dispute. Fuentes said Mass was taken to St. Joseph Regional Medical Center, where he was declared dead. Fuentes said police believe there was supposed to be a child custody exchange, but it did not happen. Basically, the ex-father-in-law showed up and killed the ex-son-in-law, Fuentes said. Brashear was contacted at the scene by police and detained. Fuentes said police don't believe Brashear attempted to flee. I think he was waiting for the officers to show up. There were several witnesses, and the incident was captured on video. The suspect gave a full confession. So this is something that was brought to our attention by Chris Cole, Victims of Family Law, and something that the family law community is definitely getting into heavy right now. Not only because this is such a relevant tragedy, but that I don't want to read too much into this. You go to a parking lot and you shoot someone who's there to pick up his kids. I don't care, and then turn yourself in. Yeah, there could be more to this story, but if that's the gist of it, because you thought that you were protecting your grandkids from an abusive father, no, like you can take the kids away. You can find, there are other options here, and this is a person who did something absolutely unjustifiable. I mean, I'm trying to think. Is there a non-aggression principle justification for this murder? I mean, if this father-in-law had been abusing the kids, or this father, excuse me, and this is the dangerous thing about a situation like this, and the state being weaponized in custody disputes, is that it creates an incentive to weaponize the state against the other spouse and to create false narratives. When there's enough of that in relationships as it is, right? But when your false narrative means you get their money and you get your child's custody, then it's really easy to commit to lies and to perhaps something that the grandfather here thought was justification for killing the father. And that I'm just one possibility. Got to consider too, is it possible that the father in this case was horrifically abusive, and that's why the divorce happened, and it was a fluke of the court system that the father got some visitation rights? I find that hard to believe, because courts generally don't favor fathers in those circumstances, right? I mean, if you're a father and a court gives you joint custody, you gotta that's a pretty good good housekeeping seal of approval on your effectiveness as a father, because you screw up one thing and the mother can point that out in court and you lose all custody. So who knows what's going to come out about this. I don't want to lead, you read too much into this. You could, for gun rights or family court stuff, but obviously the statists will use this to say this is why we need more gun control. This is why we need more government resources involved in family courts and stuff like that in custody. And it may be that society needs to dedicate more resources to custody situations, but certainly outside of the violent realm of government. And my heart goes out to everybody involved in that tragedy. All right, now quick, I guess let's check in with our audience and Jim before we get to our econ block. But man, I got a great I told you so from last week. Remember I said about the GameStop Reddit investor frenzy that was going to benefit the Wall Street people more than now we have the headline. Jim, any comments you want to share before we get to the next blog? Oh, Jim's out. CJ, comment CJ. Jim's got you're muted. Jim's got a regular type job that sometimes interferes with his activism. Yeah, what's up with that shit?
Well, I can understand and relate. So let's see here. I have to dive into the Adam versus the Man comment section. Holy cow! All right. Yeah. So let's just start with. I mean, I don't. It's like playing playing roulette, really. Let's see.
Well, when you play roulette, the house always wins, and in this case, we're the house.
Yeah, I saw Canada is trying to force flyers to quarantine at hotels at own expense.
Yeah, we covered that in our COVID block yesterday. It was the Ontario man being kept against his will. It was a 3-day quarantine. Fortunately, not like 2 weeks like they were doing in Australia or even in Texas for a while.
The things, Crypto God says, the things people value are always undermined by the officials trusted to protect them. This is more proof that we should trust it or trust, excuse me, but instead verify voluntarism. My bad, I'm mistaken. I'm not the comment guy. And let's see here. Also, when does the FBI put itself on the terrorist watch list?
Oh, well, that's the nice thing about being on the terror watch list ourselves, is that eventually the CIA is going to start sending libertarians guns and money.
Bogus Hype here, top super chatter today, says, how is Rubio able to walk around unhindered? Excuse me. God, man, maybe it's the cannabises. I don't know.
All right. Well, hey, let me try to address this, and for Bogus's benefit here, if nobody else. How is Rubio able to walk around unhindered? That's what, like, I think one of the things that makes me unique as a libertarian intellectual is that I look for unusual questions, and I try to answer them and make sure that my worldview can answer them, or you know, that I have an answer that squares to it, that I don't just throw my hands up and go, I don't know, that's subjective, I couldn't figure it out. But when you ask this question, like, how is, because if you look at Marco Rubio honestly, and I don't mean to single him out, but as another major Washington, you know, political player, tyrant, profiteer of this unethical system, how is he able to walk around and like not have more public angst, right? Right? How is he not? Are people not just like throwing tomatoes at him when he goes to the grocery store, shit like that? and they're.
Whoa! I know I'm muted, but I'm waiting. You told me to say stop. Wait, Adam. We don't want you to be the Maxine Waters of the Libertarian Party, where if you see Marco Rubio in town, you throw your tomatoes.
No. Like, no. I'm getting to a bigger point, CJ. Don't worry. I'm getting to a bigger point here. No, so, but why you have to ask why? Like, but really a more serious question there is, how does he keep getting reelected, right? So I would rephrase this question as, how do assholes like this, who we know are sellouts, who we know serve the banking class and the corporate class and the military industrial complex, and they sell out the people and they sell out our rights, how is it that a significant portion, enough to create a system of consent, how is it that a significant portion of the American electorate keeps voting for these people? And you have to acknowledge that they do have, if not the majority on their side, they have the consent and support of the majority to perpetuate this system. And that's what we have to change. And you know, if I may get personal for a second on this, you asked earlier, how is this how we win? Or somebody in the comments did, right? Is this how we win? And in a sense, you know, absolutely, this is identifying the actual source of power, the foundation of the evil that we are standing up to, the injustice. And it is that there is a significant portion of the population, and it really is the majority, that supports and consents to this system and to the evil of it. And so when you recognize that Marco Rubio has that behind him, you know, you can answer that question in a way that is not just throwing your hands up or going, like, don't accept those contradictions in your worldview, in your mind, you know, resolve them. And this gets me back to the personal point of just knowing that by spreading a message of love and thoughtfulness and empathy and respect for individual rights, and expressing that in the political realm through the application of libertarian ethics, that even just reaching one person is making the world a better place. And that this struggle, you know, between those who would take advantage of our deficiencies for self-enrichment and are willing to hurt people to profit themselves, versus those of us who genuinely out of love want to move humanity forward. But right now, this is the battleground. It's over the state. And understanding it and being honest about where we are is very important. And that leads me to further reinforcement of the commitment to nonviolence, sometimes in your face civil disobedience, but also to focusing on actually addressing the problem which is not the system, but the consent to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Slow clap. Thank you.
Yeah,
Right
no. Yes, sir. Yes. Mike says, how do you guys chat on Telegram? Well, let me show you how we chat on Telegram for just a quick moment. So you can, if you don't know, if you just downloaded Telegram, you can go to our public Telegram channel, and that'll we'll see if you can comment. If you can't, again, let us know that you're trying to get in. We'll get with Jim or myself, and we'll get you in.
If this is the one place I'm thinking I'm going to be interacting with the comments. Like I want to, at least as we get it going, until it gets overwhelming, I want to read all the comments on all the posts on this channel. And I've been thinking about this because I've been engaging with Twitter naturally, and even more ramping up the last few years.
Okay, so check this out, Adam, real quick.
No, Mike, my point is, I want to use this instead of Twitter. I want to put my energy interacting with people into the comments on our Telegram channel rather than random Twitter shit.
Back to Mike's question real quick, though. By the time I had already put this up, Mike's already joined the group.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's not hard, is it, Mike? I mean, honestly, to get on our public Telegram or, in our group there.
But I got to point out, there's another part to answer this question, which is if you really want to chat directly with us and be involved in the behind-the-scenes conversation with the team, join the Producers Club. Today's special, you can join for a $50 super chat or $10 at patreon.com/Adam versus the man. All right. What else have we got here?
One more comment.
Go ahead.
No, you got it. You take it.
All right. Heavy karma debt. It's the year 2022. People are still the same. They'll do anything to get what they need. And they need Soylent Green. What is the secret of Soylent Green? It's people! Yeah, okay. I haven't seen the movie, but I get the reference. Thank you. All right. So, the Washington Post has this headline from Douglas McMillan and Yegane Torbati. How the rich got richer. Reddit trading frenzy benefited Wall Street elite. Now, we're going to read this with a skeptical eye, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's presumptuous for me to say I told you so early in the game, because I said as soon as this story popped up, and I saw a lot of people get excited about this, and I thought, oh, they might all be suckers. You're not going to stick it to the man by giving the man your money. That's not how money works. No, not unless we all gave up our dollars, right, and started using crypto instead, and said we reject your system entirely. But even then, spend the money. Don't just give it back to them, right? But when I saw this, that there was an attempt to challenge the hedge funds who had shorted GameStop and get them to lose money, and there has been some significant results, from this, that the short-term gains, might be significant there, but the long-term loss for small investors is going to far outweigh that. Now, I'm still not trying to pass judgment on this thing overall. If you are non-violently trying to stick it to the man, unless you're, although I would say there might be a counterproductive element to this, but if you're doing that in good faith, I just want to love and support and encourage you, even if I think it's tactically or strategically misguided. And so before I get any more critical of this, I want to point out that there are other great positives in this, in terms of challenging the financial elites by crowdsourcing financial action. That's awesome. Calling attention to certain corrupt elements of the system. That's awesome. Forcing them to respond in ways that revealed the corruption of, straight to the top, the White House, Joe Biden himself interfering with your right as an individual American to trade stocks and companies. Yeah, those are all great things to come out of this. And this is something I still want to celebrate, but here's the I told you so. Last month's GameStop trading mania was sparked by members of a popular Reddit investing community who said they hoped to strike back at the Wall Street elites who had long dismissed them as dumb money, but growing evidence casts doubt on the idea that the episode mostly benefited small-time investors. Now, I guess before I go any further, there's another possible I told you so baked into this, and we might not find out for a while, but that the members of the popular Reddit investing community who were behind this, You don't think they had some personal interest? You don't think they had some stake? You don't think maybe some people, maybe they were communicating with people at GameStop? Maybe there was some other kickback? And for all the small investors who got sucked into this thinking that they were going to make money and lost, if you were frauded that way, I feel sorry for you for sure. Giant mutual funds that own the largest stake in GameStop saw the biggest gains in value. Hedge funds, some that have started using algorithms to track retail investors on social media sites, appear to have bought and sold millions of shares during the stock's most volatile period of trading. And in at least some cases, novice investors lost their shirts. Instead of heralding a new wave of investor populism, the rise and fall of GameStop's stock may end up reinforcing what professional investors have known for a long time. Wall Street is very good at making money. More often than not, smaller investors lose out to wealthy traders and giant institutions. The four largest asset managers in the world together own 39% of GameStop shares, according to regulatory filings. Those stakes, which are mostly held for years in passive index funds, have collectively gained roughly $1 billion in value since the beginning of this year. One hedge fund, Senvest Management, recently boasted to clients that it made more than $700 million from a bet it placed on GameStop in September, the Wall Street Journal reported last week. Now that you know these numbers, let me point something else out to you. The people who just made $700 million from their bet on GameStop didn't do it as a fluke. It wasn't the one score. No, these are people who have been doing this for decades. These are institutional investment operations and individuals playing this game who dominated and have for years. And you think if they stood to gain $700 million, that the amount it would cost to fabricate this Reddit trading frenzy from whole cloth propaganda, troll farms, manipulation, and to wait years to do it to create credible accounts on Reddit, you don't think that would be within the realm of what they might be spending those profits from their last score on the scale of $1 billion on? Oh, yeah. All right. Steve Bruce, a spokesman for Senvest, declined to comment on the GameStop trades. The sheer number of shares that changed hands during the stock's most manic trading period in late January suggests the episode was driven by more than just small retail investors. Oh, really? Some hedge funds bought shares because they were forced to cover their short positions, a financial cost imposed on investors who bet a stock will go down before it goes up. Meanwhile, other hedge fund managers were probably taking calculated short-term risks, buying and selling as the stock price traded up, said Robert J. Shapiro, a policy fellow at Georgetown, former economic advisor to Bill Clinton. Quote, you have hundreds of millions of shares being traded at prices of $200 to $300 a share. The Reddit crew cannot afford to play in this game in any significant way. The question of who profited from the stock bananas is important to regulators who are investigating whether the market was manipulated for profit. Individual investors can freely share their opinions about a stock on social media, but it's illegal for a group of investors to coordinate never to pump up a stock price. Oh my gosh, that would be collusion, right? So this is now a mess for the Wall Street regulators, and clearly the hidden hand of larger investors is present in this. And I'm the bigger question here now is, how does this play out? Do they follow through on this from the regulatory perspective and, hold everyone accountable under the law? Or does this get swept under the rug as just another big Wall Street score of manipulating a crowd of investors that we've seen before and probably will see again? Although there does seem to be a unique amount of legit small investor and small-time financial advisors being involved in this through the Reddit frenzy that is leading to some, tragic consequences besides people getting screwed out of their savings and now struggling to afford groceries. The Wall Street Journal has this headline: Robinhood faces wrongful death lawsuit over young traders' suicide. Company also faces class action lawsuits over its decision last month to restrict trading in several high-flying stocks. Yep. The family of a 20-year-old student took his own life after believing he racked up big trading losses on Robinhood Markets Incorporated, filed a lawsuit against the company saying its reckless conduct directly and proximately caused the death of one of its victims. The father, mother, and sister of Alex Kearns, a Robinhood user and an undergraduate at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, said in a complaint filed in California State Court on Monday that Robinhood contributed to his death through misleading communications about his investments and virtually non-existent customer service. They are seeking unspecified damages. We were devastated by Alex Kearns' death, a Robinhood spokesman said in an email. We remain committed to making Robinhood a place to learn and invest responsibly. Robinhood was one of the biggest beneficiaries of the boom in retail trading during pandemic lockdowns, which reached new heights last month with the mania around GameStop and other stocks favored by Reddit's Wall Street Bets forum. The company amassed about 20 million users by the end of last year, and executives have told investors that Robinhood is planning an IPO in the first half of 2021. Now, in terms of Kearns here, let's see. He initiated a sophisticated options trade through Robinhood, which he believed his maximum loss was limited to less than $10,000. The complaint said one weekend in June, Robinhood emailed Mr. Kearns to alert him that he needed to deposit about $178,000 in a few days' time to help rectify a negative balance, which the app showed was roughly $730,000. Now, if you are they responsible for a suicide? No, no matter what. No, this is not. No, you cannot hold someone else responsible for someone else's actions like that. Are they responsible for fraud, for an attempted fraud, perhaps? Oh, yeah. But what's worse here is the society and the propaganda around this whole thing and the institutional push that says if you owe $730,000 to Robinhood, well, your credit is destroyed and your life is over and screw you. Might as well commit suicide. I mean, there aren't that many people who buy into that to begin with. I don't know. Maybe that I suppose I'm speaking to that mainstream attachment to credit scores, right? To being bullied like this, to that when a company with a logo sends you an email and says you owe $730,000, to think that they can take it from you. Mr. Kearns emailed Robinhood's customer support team 3 times overnight asking for more information, received only auto replies. He wrote a note to his family asking how someone of his inexperience was allowed to trade so easily, then killed himself. This is not enough by itself. I would bet money. I would bet stocks that Mr. Kearns here had other issues leading up to this last particular event. I'm not defending Robinhood here, obviously, but this was, the straw that broke the camel's back. This was not enough to push him to suicide, I think, by itself. Robinhood's emails failed to inform Mr. Kearns that the negative $730,000 balance may have referred to only one leg of his trade and that he had offsetting options that he could exercise that would have more than covered his obligation, the complaint said. Robinhood doesn't maintain hotlines for customers to call, so Mr. Kearns didn't have the option of reaching a live agent by phone. So the complaint says, though Alex's panic and confusion were clearly caused by Robinhood's misleading communications, Robinhood was impossible to reach at the most critical moment to repair the damage it had created. Now, there's also a class action lawsuit from dozens of customers over its decision to restrict trading in GameStop and other stocks, and there is an element of fraud being committed by Robinhood in that even if they put in their fine print, we reserve the right to blah, 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 if we otherwise represent publicly that you can trade this way and then we prevent you from trading that way and then point to the fine print, even if it's not, technically illegal because you put it in the fine print and government asserts your right as a company to do that, it is a fraud in spirit. You are using that deception to commit fraud, to stop people or to deceive people. And this story of Mr. Kearns, committing suicide may become the iconic tragedy, the say his name, of the Reddit trading frenzy. But we are going to find out, I do believe, maybe not to the bottom of this, but we are going to find out who was really behind this this trading frenzy, and who benefited from all the money. But there are a lot of people who lost out, and it's not people like Mr. Kearns, it's people who invested their entire savings of $5,000 to $10,000. There was one story we saw, I think it was in the New York Times last week, highlighting how much faith people had in this exercise. One woman having mortgaged her house and her parents' house in order to put all of that money into GameStop stock. And she might have lost out significantly when that stock price came down. So, a couple more economic stories before we get to Russia and the good news. Bloomberg, global markets see inflation breaking out to multi-year highs. Global markets from United States and European bonds to stocks and oil are sending a clear signal. Inflation is finally coming back. Now, I always have to stop and say inflation can mean two things. And one way that we have been led to think of inflation is that it is an inflation of prices. Prices go up, they are inflated. And that's actually really a symptom of the original thing that the term was supposed to apply to, which is an inflation of the monetary supply by creating more money that ends up leading prices to go up. So when we talk about inflation in this context, I'm not looking at it from the perspective of, oh my gosh, are my prices for this going up? But the bigger picture that is reflective of, which is the stability of the dollar, the increase in the monetary supply, the effect of more dollars chasing less or the same number of goods, and in particular, the phenomena that we're facing in those regards right now around the COVID crisis, where productivity has plummeted and yet government spending has increased, especially in terms of liquidity going out to consumers in relief, stimulus, paycheck protection program, whatever the heck it is, loans, not just in the United States, but in governments all over the world. And those two major countervailing economic forces would suggest that we are coming to a period of potential runaway inflation that would threaten the ability of the dollar to survive. That this could be sort of a snowballing domino effect chain of events that because COVID, and of course, after everything that set up the financial system for this pre-COVID, but because COVID led to a sudden depression of productivity and a sudden inflation of the monetary supply, particularly in the retail arena because of the stimulus, then or the shift to stimulus funds, then you might end, although that's going to be less money than you would have in the market if everybody kept their jobs, right? But that those countervailing forces could lead to runaway inflation. And that would be a situation where the government has to keep creating money through the central bank in order to keep the economy functioning. And that's when you get into the accelerated death spiral of the fiat currency, as we've seen in South Africa, the Weimar Republic, Venezuela, a few other instances in human history of major fiat currency systems going through a period of runaway inflation. So watching that from this perspective, I can look at this and go, there's a lot of highfalutin econ terms I don't entirely understand, but we can see that there are some potential big indicators here of where these other dynamics are trending right now. So the market implied pace of U.S. consumer price increases briefly accelerated to the fastest since 2014, and 30-year Treasury yields temporarily topped 2% for the first time in a year as rising expectations for an economic recovery fueled by an oil rally. Over in Europe, a swap market gauge of future inflation is close to its highest level since 2019. Treasury long, and there's a link here. Treasury long bond reaches 2% milestone as global yields awaken. The S&P 500 index of U.S. equities has notched fresh highs, while stocks Europe 600 built on its best weekly gain since mid-November. Brent crude futures rallied more than 1% on Monday, adding to last week's 6.2% advance. It's all coming ahead of a report Wednesday that forecasts to show U.S. consumer prices rising at a quickening pace. So there's this sort of programmed increase in U.S. consumer prices, in that the system is engineered in an inflationary way. And of course, this is what makes Bitcoin and crypto such an awesome alternative, is that when you have a limit to the monetary supply, is in a mathematical limit to how many Bitcoins there can be on a blockchain, or same thing for any other crypto, it is inherently deflationary. It is engineered to be deflationary by nature, whereas fiat currencies are engineered to be inflationary. And so the fact that like a dollar doesn't buy what it used to, that the actual purchasing power of the dollar since the institution of this current system is just the benchmark going back to the founding of the Federal Reserve a little over 100 years ago, the dollar having lost, depending on how you count it, 96, 97% of its value, the purchasing cost or purchasing power of a dollar You know, like the candy that you used to be able to buy for 3 cents costs $1 now. Yeah, that's pretty huge, but it's been engineered, and it's been a slow decline in the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar. And there have been a lot of things along the way that have gotten us to this point. Libertarians, of course, gold bugs. We like to point out that that President Nixon taking us off the gold standard in 1972, that was a significant decoupling that allowed the dollar to float and to then be inflated even further. But that didn't cause the death spiral that a lot of economists or libertarians predicted. And Ron Paul was a major student of this, but he never crossed into the sky's about to fall, dollar's about to crash category. So when you see that that's what's happening, and that and since then, every asshole selling gold and silver, except me, I never resorted to this particular fear tactic. I said the dollar's about to crash, you better have some gold and silver. No, but you should have some backstop in an alternative currency that has the properties of gold and silver as a matter of material wealth. Just as a basic safety thing. I'm not trying to make bigger investment advice or planning advice for you, but if you can afford it, the idea of not having a $500 chunk of silver and gold and some very small denominations to be able to use, it's like, why not? Seems ridiculous. Seems like, why not have that as just a matter of survival, knowing that it's also going to be at very least a solid investment that kind of has a limit on how much it could possibly lose, even in value, even with the most obscene of market manipulations. It's not like a company stock that can go to zero if the company declares bankruptcy or dissolves. It's tangible metals. So the market moves signal that investors are more bullish on inflation than they have been for years, betting on the global economy bouncing back as huge fiscal stimulus programs spur demand and the vaccine rollout gathers pace. That's causing a dramatic repricing of bonds most sensitive to rising prices, raising long-term borrowing costs. So there's a lot more to the story. Again, there's always links in the description. But the conclusion of the story for me about inflation is that we are coming to a period of increased instability in global financial markets and currency markets, and we are seeing challenges along the lines of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and the development of alternative technologies and ways for people to trade and exchange value, even just through things like PayPal, that we are demanding, or Cash App, that we are demanding that kind of convenience. Venmo, Zelle, just even mainstream banking apps provide so much more convenience and functionality that we're going to kind of come to demand and expect that at some point. So with what we're looking at now, is there going to be an acceleration of the dollar's demise or devaluation to lead to some runaway spiral of inflation? I don't think we can safely predict that that's going to happen anytime, within the next 5 years. And I think outside of 5 years, the only thing that we can predict is that there is going to be a fundamental shift in the monetary system. And it's all the more important to spread this awareness, because that shift might be towards a government-controlled digital currency, as opposed to one that is truly decentralized and open source in the sense that Bitcoin and other blockchain-based cryptocurrencies are. So raising the conscientiousness around this right now is absolutely critical, and we'll be keeping an eye on it here for you. I think it is safe to predict that within the next 10 years, we are going to see a fundamental shift in how the world does money. That's pretty broad, right? Pretty safe to say, but we all need to be paying attention to that, at least to some degree. You've T rolled Mustonks. Yeah, Mustonks. Thank you very much. All right, Daily Dot. Speaking of crypto, Daily. Oh, wait, another one. Merlin Wheeler III. The whole system is like this because we can't grow cannabis like it was corn. Then all the markets would return to the local farmer. Maybe not that simple, but yes, your broader point is well taken. If individual economic rights to just being productive, to being creative, to producing things of value are respected, yeah, this consolidation of the monetary system wouldn't be possible. Consolidation through economic pressure, through licensing, through corporatism that just consolidates production of goods and services under large corporate umbrellas does have a restrictive effect on individuals being able to do that in a way that obviously keeps you trapped in the system as wage slaves, as good corporate employees. All right, Daily Dot. Our next headline, Elon Musk's big Bitcoin buy, may have been a distract from bad Tesla news. I don't care. There's always bad Tesla news. There's not always this great Tesla / Bitcoin news. News of the $1.5 billion Bitcoin purchase came right after China revealed its concerns with Tesla. Yeah, electric car maker Tesla announced on Monday that it has purchased $1.5 billion in the cryptocurrency Bitcoin, but some are questioning whether the acquisition was made to distract from issues the manufacturer is facing in China. What could it possibly be facing there? Let's see, skipping ahead here. Less than an hour before the Bitcoin announcement, Chinese officials revealed that they had met with Tesla due to a growing number of customer complaints. Specifically, officials from 5 separate state-run agencies brought up issues surrounding battery fires, problems with Tesla's over-the-air software updates, and incidents involving unexpected acceleration. So that sounds like normal stuff that they're going to find as they roll out any kind of major new vehicle technology. And of course, the United States government, Biden administration, trying to step on Musk's space exploration ventures. No surprise, governments all over the world, as teams of tyrants, are going to beset the individual tyrants. And I'm not saying that Musk is a tyrant per se, but certainly he enjoys outsized wealth because of his profiteering from the government system. To see governments go after him, a lot of this, it's really just show. And I wouldn't put too much stake in it, except to see that if Elon Musk is the elite rich establishment, the fact that he is now investing in Bitcoin coming our way on crypto, that's a good thing. Whether he's got some nefarious plot to divert towards some government crypto coin, whatever, maybe I think his ultimate instinct is to preserve the system that profits him. But like we saw Bezos recently step back from Amazon in order to focus on his nonprofits, when you get to a level of that kind of wealth, your view of the world has got to shift in some meaningful way, where you go, what do I want to do? Do I really want to preserve the system that made me rich, or use my wealth to take down the system? And the more Elon Musk goes that way, the more I'm going to be cheering for him doing things like buying $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. Follow-up headline to that from Bloomberg: Bitcoin's Tesla-driven rally fizzles after prices hit $48,000. And it's funny to hear like this acknowledgement from the mainstream financial media going, Bitcoin went down. It was so terrible. Look at how this is the worst fall of an asset. It went from 48,000 to 46. Did you forget to mention how much crow you've eaten since it went from $0 to $48,000? But yeah, we are at the point of coming down from a bubble. And I would say again, there's never a bad time to buy crypto. If you want to make a major investment and you want to time it precisely, and you have the initiative and the wherewithal to look into crypto and time the markets and look at this bubble and see, is it going to come down further? Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a pretty safe bet that Bitcoin is going to come down a little bit off of this bubble that has it to its all-time high of $48,000. But there's never a bad time to buy and hold and invest in this if it's something that you want. But also as a matter of economic diversification, even if only as a sort of another backstop. Even if you have, I would say, even if you have no faith, or if you have less faith than I do in crypto and in metal, functionally at least, if you have the economic wherewithal, if only out of a means of curiosity or diversification, get a wallet app on your phone, buy a few $100s of Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, or a couple cryptos, but even just the big one, just go with Bitcoin, and have that, and have a few $100s worth of gold, and as we would say in the Marines, better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. That's, I think, the most important economic advice you could ever get, right? And another comment from Euban T. Rolled: as long as the U.S. dollar is backed by Tomahawk missiles, the dollar will be worth what the folks that fire those missiles say they're worth. Yes and no, and that's a very good point, that our whole fiat currency system around the central bank is backed up by the empire of the United States military, but to a larger degree, it's consent. There's a huge element of coercion, but it's a lot more deceit that leads to maybe it's not consent if it's by fraud, right? Merlin Wheeler III. I'm telling you, the best investment in futures is copper. Well, yeah, if you want to get futures, you want to get into that. too hard to steal because it's so heavy to run away with. Yeah, no, and there is like for me here at the property in Gardenia, stockpiling materials to building materials and glass and metal and other. I don't have any copper bars, but it wouldn't be a bad diversification to have a chunk of copper coins or something like that as well. But or was I saying something interesting before I went to the comments there? Probably not. I didn't remember it. So anyway, few more stories to get to before we come to the end of our show here. CNBC, SpaceX begins accepting $99 pre-orders for its Starlink satellite internet service as Musk eyes IPO. And this is what this would do, not only by creating a faster, more effective, more efficient internet, it would put a huge number of these anti-free speech telecoms out of business. Now, is Elon Musk going to be perfect with this? I don't know. But what this gets us to in terms of the next level of speed, maybe one step closer to mesh nets with satellite, $99 pre-sales. $499 to order the Starlink kit. I don't want to endorse this project. I haven't looked into it enough. I don't have $99 to pre-order. I'm just looking forward to getting 5G out here because I know that's going to work. But who knows? Maybe this will come faster, and I do support this happening. I'm glad that it's happening, and good progress. But as I was mentioning earlier, UNZ.com, the Unz Review, has this headline: Insanity personified. Biden's Department of Justice targets Elon Musk and SpaceX for hiring Americans instead of non-Americans. Yeah. Weird. Yeah. These are the kind of twisted headlines we can enjoy under a Biden administration as opposed to the twisted headlines that we've been enjoying under the Trump administration. NBC has this headline: in Florida, we have these two interesting hacking stories to cover real quick. In Florida, a near miss with a cybersecurity worst case scenario. A hacker broke into a Florida water treatment plant and ordered it to increase the amount of lye to extremely dangerous levels. Yeah, a hacker broke into a Florida water treatment plant and ordered it to increase the amount of lye in the water. Yeah, this is crazy. The plant operators noticed and remedied their systems before anyone was put in danger, but the event highlights the risks of internet-connected controls to civic infrastructure. Is it really that hard? If you're going to have something that could poison an entire city, that you would just not have to access that by the internet? Could you just, that's something worth showing up in person for and turning the knobs directly on, right? Do you really need maybe internet monitoring, right? But internet control, are we that lazy? In a news conference Monday, Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Gualtieri said that on Friday morning, an unknown hacker broke into a program designed to help water treatment operators in Oldsmar troubleshoot problems. Oh, it's just for troubleshooting problems with the computerized parts of their treatment systems. The program intended to give full remote access to a plant computer, but only by authorized users. Yep. Later that afternoon, the system was breached again. A hacker who authorities believe to be the same one from the initial breach took control of the computer and changed the acceptable level of sodium hydroxide, better known as lye, the main ingredient in many household drain cleaners, from 100 parts per million to 11,100. Acceptable level. Yeah. If the operator had missed it and didn't change the change didn't trigger some of the plant's alarms, the lye could have seeped into the water supply in 24 to 36 hours. Yeah. Pretty weak sauce as far as hacking goes. More interestingly and titillatingly, the Daily Star has this: hacked sex robots could be told to kill users as experts warn it's a piece of cake. Yeah. That's how they're going to get you. Increasingly sophisticated AI and robots intended for intimate use poses a grave threat to humanity should developers fail to safeguard against malicious hacks. Legal experts are warning. All right, two quick stories from Russia to wrap up the show today. Putin's crackdowns from Bloomberg. Putin's crackdown chills protests that threaten 2-decade rule. That's how long Putin's been more or less in charge of Russia's government. I won't say more than that. Ludmila Stein, a 24-year-old Muscovite and municipal deputy, is under house arrest until May and risks a 2-year jail term for encouraging people to join a protest last month. Remember, we also had the story that Putin is jailing people on social media for jokes. This is the kind of censorship that should have you thinking The lies are wearing thin. The Wall Street Journal also has this headline: Navalny movement scraps protests as it digs in for long haul. This is following mass arrests and police violence. The opposition in Russia shifts focus from the streets to the ballot box. And, maybe there's a natural period in an uprising, as we're seeing come to fruition in Russia right now, where they go through a period of just getting people upset and protesting and getting in the streets. But maybe that movement matures. Maybe that is the course of progress, and that going to peaceful or non-confrontational means of overthrowing the Putin regime are a better way forward. And for those of you that don't know, Alexei Navalny has been someone who has been leading the opposition to Putin for many, many years, has been jailed, poisoned, and faced all sorts of legal persecution for standing up to President Vladimir Putin, including, he has also, in his run against him, he's been sent to Siberia. If you don't know the backstory on Alexei Navalny, it's definitely worth looking into. And these two stories, unfortunately, we don't have any more time to get into them, but they will be in the notes at t.me/Adam versus the man. Exactly, right there. CJ, get yourself back up on screen. Let's check in with the audience and sign off with some promos and good news, shall we?
Yeah, so what a show. Anyways, lots to talk about. So I guess I'm under federal investigation. Take away my guns. Like, okay, over my dead body. All right, whatever.
I knew you were gonna have something to say about the guns
over my dead body. All right, and the people that live around me also believe like me over our dead bodies. So good luck. Anyways, if you would like to help out with the show here, or if you'd like to just find out more about us, if you're a first-time watcher of this show, welcome to Adam versus the Man, where you can go again to adamversustheman.com, and from there you can click on our Patreon link where you can help support us, and this is where you can help for $1, $5, $10, or $50 a month, depending on which level you can afford, and everything helps. And we do try to stay active for our audience and cater to the ones that help support the show. And little financial help goes a long way. So thank you to all of our patrons that support us as well. From there, so to show you our thanks, we have the Producers Club, where again, if you want some merchandise, you can get 15% off and free shipping. Where, again, I tend to like, I don't know, the hats. I got myself a nice hat here that, it's clean. It looks great. I love it. I wear it out. I think I should just for Jim's sake say, hey, if you want to help Jim out, we've got Comment Jim Freedom T-shirts, and there's just all little ways that you can help support and be an active, rewarding member of the audience. We do this to yes, entertain, but to also educate and to have our daily fun. At the end of the day, Adam, we've stayed consistent on this show for a long time, and I think that there's a lot that we've learned. I don't think that there's any way I'm going to call you a domestic terrorist for being a libertarian. I would hope you wouldn't do that to me, but so we got to have like a jury of our peers. That's important. I think like it'd be really hard to take 12 stoners and be like, well, these are my peers. All right, so they're going to convict me? No, these are my peers. They're all potheads. And they think like me, that this is a medicine and I don't want to be on your opioids, and so that's kind of like and just an unspoken thing. But Adam, for you, of course, got to
smoke weed every day. Smoke weed every day. Smoke weed every day.
Thank you, CJ.
And okay, and then last but not least, closing out with our sponsor, now linked on our website, so it's easier for you to get to, is Cigar Federation. You can go to Cigar Federation for promo code Adam10. That's Adam ADAM AM10. Why is that not working? Set it up like this. Hold up. Wait a minute. Where Adam ADAM10 gets you 10% off at Cigar Federation, where you can choose your delicious flavor cigar and get all of your tobacco habits via Cigar Federation. Adam's preferred choice for all things tobacco. So, I'm not Jim, okay? I'm not Jim. This is where, again, it's just better to have a Jim Freedom who knows how to get through the promos, and he's good at that. To close out all the comments, the loose ends in the comments, I'm like,
Any more super chats? Last chance to buy your way in for $50.
Yes, we got to remind our bogus hype is the winner of today's producer club buy-in, I guess, via super chat of $50. I mean, thank you very much, of course. I don't know if you're into Instagram and like kitties, but if you're into Instagram and you like kitties, go to the Garden of Freedom and check out what Adam's been doing here on his projects. And
Well, hold on, CJ. Let me say something about that, because you know what? It's not just if you like Instagram, like fuck Instagram. Like Instagram is a corrupt Facebook product. I have no special love for Instagram in this, but if you love kittens, Instagram is a functional photo sharing app, and if you don't just scroll the feed and let them, send you ads and propaganda and control what you're looking at, Instagram is a great photo album sharing, connecting app, just outside of that, and we can appreciate it. And I would say, hey, if nothing else, please download the Instagram app. It's not meaningfully supporting Facebook. If you download the Instagram app and just use it to look at our Garden of Freedom gallery, and I would appreciate it if you did that.
Oh, yeah, do that too. I mean, I don't have Instagram. I'm not downloading Instagram. But if you have Instagram, absolutely go over. I get to watch the Instagram through the show. So, that's when I get to see the updates when Jim's like, oh, look at the kitties. I'm like, of course he posted pictures of kitties. He loves kitties. He's got lots of kitties. That's what he does. So, yeah, I mean, obviously. All right, so Mike says that he can't comment there. I don't know if this is a Telegram issue or a me issue, but I'll be figuring out how to get this Telegram channel. I think there's a discussion group. Like, it's like the channel links to a discussion group, and we want to get people into the discussion group.
Maybe make that has to be the default, so that when you join the channel, right under, like, when I'm looking at it now, maybe it's the view I've got under. No,
I see. Like, I posted, anyone got any comments, and nobody can comment back to that.
Yeah, no, there's start a voice chat. No, that's so weird, because when I was looking at it a second ago, it's okay. So if you scroll over
the public channel,
when I'm looking, so CJ, it might just be that when you're logged in, but when I'm logged in, like underneath every post there, it says leave a comment. So it's working well.
Of course. Who doesn't want to have a conversation with Bubbles about kitties?
You have to. So look, like, I can't pin this one. Can I pin to top? Let's see.
What do joins and these comments have in common? Loose ends. Well done, 420 Patrick. You're a great comment today.
Okay, so CJ, it might be that you are as a admin of the Adam versus the Man public channel, it doesn't have me the leave a comment option, but when I look at it as myself as a user, underneath I can see leave a comment as an option. So it might just be a viewer issue that if people are viewing it, they need to, I don't know, maybe it's in our settings, but yeah.
All right. Anyway. Well, last comment for the day, Adam. How's it hanging, dude? From Icy Wisdom.
Very well. Very, very well. As always. All right. So to the good news, it was 50 years ago today, Satchel Paige became the first Negro League player to enter the Baseball Hall of Fame. one of giving white broadcasters everywhere today one of the few appropriate chances to say the word Negro, right? Yeah, well, this is a pretty significant accomplishment. You think about the state of race relations 50 years ago today, and he got a unanimous vote from all the men on the committee. I don't know if there were women, probably no women on the committee, but they agreed that Page must be the first Negro League player to be elected. Also, on this day in 1962, Jamaica became independent. On this day in 1982, George Harrison presented UNICEF with a check for $9 million 10 years after his fundraising began in the Concert for Bangladesh. On this day in 1991, voters in Lithuania voted for independence. On this day in 1994, the Vance Owen peace plan for Bosnia and Herzegovina was announced. On this day in 1995, Space Shuttle astronauts Bernard A. Harris Jr. and Michael Foale became the first African American and first Briton to perform spacewalks. And on this day, 23 years ago, the first annual Random Acts of Kindness Week began. Originally, the idea to practice random acts of kindness and senseless acts of beauty came to Ann Herbert while sitting in a Sausalito cafe during the 80s. So I encourage y'all to think about that and take that as a reminder. Never a bad time to be reminded to practice random acts of kindness and senseless acts of beauty. And with that, peace and love, y'all. Choose happiness and be excellent to each other.